I remember standing in my parents' living room, the air thick with the faint scent of lilies from my brother's wedding, thinking about the $127,000 they had poured into it. The glittering photographs on the mantle showed a day of perfection, a groom beaming under chandeliers, a bride in a gown that seemed impossibly white. I had smiled for the camera, but inside I had always felt like an afterthought, a shadow in a family that celebrated excess in comparison like it was a sport. When the time came for my own wedding, Dad's ultimatum landed like a door slammed shut in a hallway I had been pacing for years. Follow my rules or pay yourself. I remember the pause, the way the words hung between us, weighted with expectation and authority. I wanted to nod, to say yes, to take the easy path, but something deep inside resisted. Not rebellion for the sake of it, but the quiet insistence that I had a right to live my life on my terms. I began planning in secret, choosing elements that mattered to me. A modest venue with natural light, a caterer who treated people like family, not numbers on a receipt, and friends who had been my support system through decades of quiet marginalization. Each decision, though small, felt like carving out a space where I existed fully without apology. The struggle was internal more than external. I anticipated disappointment, imagined the disapproval, and wrestled with the guilt of defying them. Every RSVP sent was a tiny act of self-assertion, each guest carefully selected to reflect my life, my values, my history. I was not angry. I was deliberate, cautious, and slow, letting the choices speak instead of shouting my independence. A week before the wedding, my mother glanced at the guest list and stiffened, a silence spreading between us. Dad read it over, his brow furrowed, but he said nothing. That silence carried more weight than words ever could. I watched the micro expressions, the slight narrowing of eyes, the pause before a sip of coffee. It was a quiet confrontation, subtle yet undeniable. They were realizing, perhaps for the first time, that control was no longer theirs. The wedding day itself was a lesson in calm empowerment. My parents sat at their designated table, faces composed, yet the tension was visible to anyone paying attention. They watched my friends, mentors, colleagues, people who had shaped my life and who respected me interact with my extended family. I could see it in glances and half smiles that recognition had dawned. The authority they thought unassailable had quietly eroded. And yet there was no celebration, no vindictive glee. I didn't seek to humiliate, only to live truthfully. As I walked down the aisle, the morning sunlight pooling across the venue, I felt a steady calmness settle over me. The quiet power I had built through careful, deliberate choices was now visible, undeniable, but restrained. Afterward, memories flickered through my mind. Childhood birthdays overshot out, whispered comparisons to my brother, the subtle ways they had measured me and found me wanting. I had carried those echoes into adulthood, almost unconsciously shaping my decisions. Today, however, I was choosing differently. I was no longer invisible, and I had no need for their approval to feel complete. The day ended with subdued congratulations, quiet conversations, and laughter that felt unburdened. My parents did not speak their realization aloud. It didn't need to be said. I understood it in the small gestures, the stiff nods, the acknowledgement that I had finally claimed my life. In that restrained space between expectation and action, I found dignity, self-respect, and a calm certainty I had never known before. The victory was subtle, uncelebrated, and entirely mine. Power had shifted, not with a dramatic confrontation, but with patience, intention, and integrity. I had chosen myself, and in doing so, I finally understood the quiet strength of standing firm without spectacle. The lingering tension remains, as it always will. Families are rarely neat or fully reconciled, but for the first time I understood that some consequences, the shift in perception, the subtle recognition of autonomy, can be felt more profoundly than any shouted triumph. And in that knowledge I carried forward, steady, unseen, yet unyielding, into the life I had quietly, resolutely claimed.